My mother didn't even blink when she said it from across the table. She stared straight at me and dropped the words, "You're not even half the woman your sister is." The words hit me so hard it felt as if the room tilted. I pushed my chair back, my chest tight with all the years I had spent swallowing my voice. And then, finally, I spoke. "Then let her start paying you rent." Forks froze in midair. The color drained from my father's face. "Rent? What are you talking about?" he whispered, as if the truth might devour him if he said it out loud. But that moment, the shock, the heavy silence, the fear reflected in his eyes, was nothing compared to what came next, because the real secret had yet to come to light. My name is Nora Ellis, and for most of my life, I have been the quiet one, in a family that never stops talking about my sister. People often think I'm shy, but that's not entirely true. I learned very young that in my parents' house, silence kept the peace. And peace, even when it was fragile or false, was something I tried to protect at all costs. On paper, my life looks fairly stable. I work as a financial manager at a logistics company near the Port of Portland. My world is made of numbers, deadlines, and systems that actually make sense. There's something comforting about spreadsheets, something real life has never quite offered me. My days follow a predictable rhythm. The echo of forklifts on the docks, the constant hum of the office, the soft click of the keyboard beneath my fingers. At night, I return home to a small apartment with warm lamps and a view of the river. Some evenings I cook pasta, tie my hair back, and cling to those small routines that make me feel in control. But that stability breaks every Friday. That's when I drive to my parents' two-story house on the outskirts of town, a place surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges and the illusion of a perfect family. From the outside, everything looks flawless. Inside, that perfection cracks very quickly. The moment I cross the threshold, something inside me slips back years. I feel 16 again. The second daughter, the one in the background, the supporting role in the grand highlight reel of Vivian's shining moments. My sister has always been the star, tall, confident, the kind of person who walks into a room, fills it completely, and assumes everyone will stop and watch. She won trophies in high school, earned a scholarship to study law, and launched a career everyone celebrated even before she had proven what she was capable of. And then there was me. Quiet, steady, watching as Vivian claimed the spotlight as if it had belonged to her since birth. My parents adore her. It has always been that way. At every family gathering, every party, every dinner, her achievements are displayed like sacred offerings. The new cases she won, the promotions she received, the house she bought, her plans, her travels, her enormous potential. And then there's me, Nora, the one who started paying for her education at 17. Nora, the one who worked 2 jobs while going to college. Nora, the one who never asks for help. I learned very early not to. It's not that my parents disliked me, they simply preferred the louder story, the one that shone brighter. Still, I kept showing up every Friday, because they insisted. My father always said, "This family has a place for you. Don't leave it empty." He said it half as a joke, half in earnest. My mother would call if I was even 5 minutes late. Family comes first, she would remind me, though it often felt like Vivian came first. Dinner always followed the same script. My mother cooked the same roasted chicken. My father asked the same questions. Vivian shared the same victories. And I pushed the food around my plate, pretending the weight of the silence wasn't crushing me from the inside. But the Friday before everything exploded, something felt different. My mother kept looking at me with a hard, appraising expression. Vivian seemed strangely triumphant, as if she knew something I didn't yet. Even my father's smile looked weaker than usual. I felt it then, a storm forming beneath the polite clinking of plates. I just didn't know that I would be the first one to be hit. That Friday, dinner began as it always did, but the air was heavy with something I couldn't quite name. My mother lingered by the stove longer than usual, stirring the same pot over and over, her jaw tight. Vivian scrolled through her phone with a smile so self-satisfied it looked like it had been practiced in front of a mirror. My father, meanwhile, kept clearing his throat, that sound he always makes when he's about to announce something important. I'd lived through enough Fridays to recognize the warning sign, but I tried to ignore it anyway. I set the table, lining up the silverware as if they couldn't feel the tension building with every breath. When we finally sat down, the conversation took its usual turn. Vivian. "She's giving a lecture next week," my mother said, puffing up with pride. "They invited her. Can you believe it? It's incredible. She's always been exceptional," my father added, flashing her a smile that looked like it belonged on a campaign poster. Vivian merely shrugged, playing her part of practiced modesty perfectly. I guess people know how to recognize talent when they see it. I chewed slowly, swallowing a bitter mix of chicken and resentment. Earlier that same day, I'd spent hours at work fixing a financial disaster someone else had left behind, but those kinds of things never made it to the family table. My own achievements lived hidden in that house, buried among old bills and forgotten grocery lists. Still, I tried to change the subject. This week, I led a major project at the office. I said it carefully, but my mother waved a dismissive hand. "You're doing fine, Nora." "But Vivian's work affects hundreds of people." "It's different." The comment was like a pinprick. Small, precise, and completely intentional. It landed exactly where she meant it to. I dropped my gaze to my plate and forced myself to keep breathing normally. "It's just another Friday," I told myself. Just another night of swallowing everything I wanted to say out loud. Then my father leaned back in his chair and let out an exaggerated sigh. "Speaking of houses," he began, "Vivian helped us last month with the mortgage paperwork. She's been a real blessing." A chill ran down my spine. "Mortgage paperwork? How lucky," I said, unable to hide it completely. Vivian's smile widened even more. "It was nothing." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. 3 years of payments slammed into my chest all at once. Payments I had made in silence, without applause or recognition, because they had asked me not to tell anyone. I had given up vacations, postgraduate courses, even the down payment on my own apartment. And in that moment, I understood they were rewriting the story. Something began to heat up in my chest. At first just a whisper, then a tide rising without asking permission. My mother must have noticed, because she shot me that look of hers, paired with the slight tilt of her head that always meant be quiet. Then she said the sentence that split me in two. "You're not even half the woman your sister is." The room didn't fall silent. It fractured. I felt my back straighten. I heard the legs of my chair scrape against the wooden floor. And I felt all the words I had swallowed for years surge up my throat at once, like a storm demanding release. For the first time in my life, sitting at that table, I didn't hold them back. I let them rise. The words came out of my mother's mouth with such cold certainty that for a second, I wondered if she had even heard herself. "You're not even half the woman your sister is," she repeated. She said it the way someone delivers a weather forecast, as if it were an obvious truth I should have accepted long ago. Something inside me went still. I pushed my chair back calmly. The screech of wood split the room in two. Vivian's smile vanished instantly. My father looked up, startled, as if he had just remembered I was sitting there too. I held my mother's gaze and spoke with a calm that didn't match what I felt inside. "Then she can start paying you rent." Silence crashed down on the table. My father blinked. "Rent? What rent?" he asked, his voice breaking, almost pleading. I didn't move. "The mortgage payments. For 3 years." 3 pairs of eyes widened at the same time. On their faces appeared a denial so sharp it brushed against fear. I felt something strange and light, as if I had just dropped a weight I had been carrying alone, one no one else even knew existed. My mother was the first to react. "Nora, don't be dramatic. They never asked me, did they?" I cut in, my voice steady. "I pay every month, just not this time. We'll cover it next month. Don't let the bank call us. I have the payments," she said quickly. "I have the receipts, I have the bills, I have everything." The color drained completely from my father's face. "You shouldn't bring this up now. This isn't the right moment." There it was again. Contempt disguised as politeness, minimization, the attempt to push the truth back into the shadows, right where they had always wanted it to stay. I stood up, placing both hands on the back of the chair. What's inappropriate is pretending Vivian saved a house that only stayed standing because I was the one paying for it. Vivian finally spoke, her voice subdued. Nora, maybe you misunderstood. Maybe Mom didn't mean it that way. But I wasn't listening anymore. I watched them struggle to twist the story, to bend it until it fit a version that felt comfortable to them. And for the first time, I didn't make myself smaller to fit into that narrative. Something inside me clicked. Clear, final, impossible to undo. Without saying another word, I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat, and stepped through the door into the cold Portland air. My breathing was unsteady, but it wasn't regret. It was the feeling of hearing myself stand up after years of sitting down. That same night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop, found the automatic mortgage payment, and canceled it. A small window popped up on the screen. Are you sure? Canceling those payments should have meant closing a chapter, but instead it opened something new. For the first time in 3 years, my bank account wasn't empty on the 15th of the month. The silence from my parents was so loud, it felt like it vibrated through the walls. I started running along the river in the mornings. At first, it was just to steady the shaking in my hands, but soon the rhythmic sound of my feet hitting the pavement began to feel like freedom. On Thursdays, I signed up for a cooking class at the community center. I learned how to make pasta from scratch and how to laugh with strangers who knew absolutely nothing about my family. I even let some friends convince me to go hiking on weekends to Mount Hood, where the air felt cleaner, as if no one had used it before. With distance, everything began to make sense. Every month, every "don't tell anyone," every praise for Vivian while I quietly paid the bills. It all clicked into place. And then the photo arrived. It was a Sunday morning. Mrs. Jensen sent it. The elderly neighbor of my parents, the one who always noticed everything. In the picture was my childhood home, with a banner hanging across the porch. Congratulations, Vivian, for preserving the family home. My entire body went still. Preserved by Vivian. My throat tightened as I stared at the banner, my hands numb. Every late-night drive, every sacrifice, every time I told myself that family came first, everything was being rewritten, as if I had never existed. I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt something else instead. Something sharper, more solid. I walked over to the dining table, pulled out the folder where I had kept, over 3 years, every printed payment and every bill, and began arranging them calmly, date by date, month by month. They no longer looked like simple papers, but like a silent autobiography made of sacrifices. That's when my phone rang. It was Sarah. "Nora, I think you should know something," she whispered. "Your parents are organizing a family dinner next month in Seattle. They asked me to prepare the presentation." I braced myself for the obvious. "Let me guess. Vivian." "It's worse than that," she said uneasily. "They want to present her as the reason the house was saved." Then she added, almost voiceless, "They gave her titles. They're calling her the pillar of the family, the savior, the heroine." All the words I had earned, but never been given. "Send me the file," I said. Sarah hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Completely." When the presentation arrived, I opened it and let out a dry laugh. Slide after slide of Vivian, proudly posing in front of the house, my parents hugging her on the porch. Phrases like, "Thank you, Vivian, for keeping our home safe." I made a copy of the file and added what they had decided to erase. After the final slide, I inserted a timeline with every payment, bar graphs showing the monthly transfers, screenshots of messages from my mother, blurred for privacy but impossible to misread. And to close, an image of the house with one simple line, "The truth deserves a place too." I saved the file on my laptop, in the cloud, and on a USB drive I slipped into my bag, beating there like an extra heart. Weeks passed. I moved into my new apartment in Seattle, bright, quiet, with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the horizon. I bought a light gray sofa, a small oak table, and a tall bookshelf. For the first time in my life, I walked through the door of a place that was entirely mine. And then the invitation arrived. A message from my mother. Family dinner, to dress nicely, no explanations, no acknowledgement, not a single apology. But when the day came, I didn't go to impress them. I went to close something that had been left open for far too long. The downtown Seattle restaurant glowed under soft amber lights, almost ceremonial. Through the glass, I saw familiar figures. My parents, Vivian in an emerald green dress, and relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone was dressed as if they were attending a formal event. And in a way, that was exactly what it was. I stayed near the entrance, out of their sight, just as my father took the microphone. "We're here," he said proudly, "to honor our daughter Vivian, who stepped up in difficult times, who helped us preserve the home that has belonged to our family for decades." Applause, practiced smiles, camera flashes. The presentation began to play. Vivian on the porch, Vivian holding documents, Vivian smiling beside my mother. Slide after slide, building a story that had never been real. Then the screen flickered, a bar graph appeared, then another, then dates, payments, month after month. 3 full years of financial support unfolded before everyone with a clarity impossible to ignore. The room fell silent. My parents froze. Vivian's mouth fell open, unable to form a single word. I stepped into the light. "If the truth makes anyone uncomfortable tonight," I said calmly, "that's not my problem." Every head turned at once. My father looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost he never expected to encounter. My mother's face tightened, not with shame, but with fear of being exposed. Vivian's eyes didn't show sadness. They showed panic. I walked until I stood in front of the screen. "For 3 years, I paid the mortgage," I said. "Not 1 month. Not a few payments. All of them." In silence. Without recognition. "While you," I looked at my parents, "rewrote the story so it would be easier to applaud her." My father tried to intervene. "Nora, let's take this outside." "Why?" I asked. "You wanted everyone to know what Vivian did. Why shouldn't they know what I did?" A murmur spread through the room like dry fire. She was always working late. 3 years. She paid all of that. I knew then that there was no going back. Vivian was trembling. "I didn't ask them to do this," she said. I looked at her and answered without harshness, but without detours. "Did you really never think about it? You had enjoyed being the heroine of a story that wasn't yours." My mother finally found her voice. "Nora, we didn't want to embarrass you." I let out a soft, tired laugh. It was more embarrassing to stay silent than to tell the truth. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket, but there was no need to use it. What was already on the screen was enough. I didn't feel the urge to keep attacking. This was never about winning. It was about being seen. "Just so it's clear," I said, "I don't want the house. I'm not seeking recognition. I simply won't allow myself to be erased." The silence lingered in the room even after I stepped away from the screen. My father reached out to me. "Nora, wait." But I didn't. I turned and walked toward the exit, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, the cold Seattle air wrapped around me like an embrace. I paused on the steps, took a deep breath, and then I understood. This wasn't revenge, it was freedom. Inside, they could argue, cry, or deny what had happened. I no longer cared. The truth had been spoken, and I had finally stepped out of the shadow they had kept me in for so long. And once you step into your own light, there is no going back. 2 days after the dinner, I was watering a small plant on my balcony when someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents standing close together, smaller than I remembered them. My mother's eyes were swollen. My father's shoulders looked tense, as if the cold Seattle air had bent them forward. I opened the door without saying a word. They stepped inside slowly, looking around my apartment as if they were walking into a life they had never imagined for me. Sunlight flooded the space, tracing the edges of the bookshelf, the new dining table, and the silence I had built for myself. My mother spoke first. "Nora, we're sorry." Her voice broke. "We were wrong. We never should have let the story become something it wasn't." "We never should have asked you to carry so much alone," my father added. "We talked, and we want your name on the house. You earned it." I let their words settle, not with anger, but with clarity. "I don't need it," I replied. "Now I have a home, my own. What I needed was respect and honesty. not a deed. They fell silent. My mother's hands were trembling. My father stared at the floor as if the truth had finally pulled him into unfamiliar territory. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly, "but I'm done disappearing. If we rebuild anything, it has to start there." Something in the room shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an opening, a place where we could breathe without the old stories pressing down on us. When they left, the apartment felt even brighter. I walked out onto the balcony, looking toward the horizon, and realized I had crossed a line with no way back. And for the first time, I felt like the future truly belonged to me. I stayed there long after the door closed behind my parents, watching the lights of Seattle flicker in the dark. For years, I thought keeping the peace meant staying silent. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you. It erases you. Choosing myself didn't destroy my family. It finally broke the story that kept me small. And maybe that's the real beginning.